This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. Business is booming, but you crave more. International expansion sounds exciting, but where do you even begin? Expanding overseas presents a wealth of opportunities, but navigating regulations, cultural nuances, and finding the right partners can feel overwhelming. What if there was a way to leverage your expertise on a global scale? In today's episode, we have Jessica Levin, COO of Abacus Worldwide and the Regional Director for Abacus North America. Abacus Worldwide is an international association focused on providing member firms with the knowledge and resources they need to grow in today's multifaceted business environment. Jessica talks about who Abacus Worldwide is, how it has supported international business referrals, and how it has provided management tools so its member firms can serve their growing clients better. You'll learn about the challenges and opportunities in global expansion, discover the importance of building relationships and networks, and Jessica will share some insights into the critical role of culture in business success. Let's dive in. Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining me on The Bottom Line today. And for those who don't know you, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jessica Levin, and I am a wearer of many hats. I am the COO for Abacus Worldwide, as well as the Regional Director for North America. And I also have a consulting business where I have worked with professional services firms, as well as small and mid-sized businesses for a very long time.
Tell us about your journey to Abacus. Obviously, you have two roles, the COO role and the Regional Director. Tell us about how you became part of the Abacus group and, your journey into the Abacus network.
I've been working with accounting firms for over 20 years. I worked in-house as a marketing director at what is now a large regional firm in the US. I also worked for another association of accounting firms full-time for many years before I went out on my own consulting and doing fractional work. And over 4 years ago now, I've been with Abacus. A mutual friend connected us as the organization was growing. And given the fact that I do a lot of fractional work, was a good fit for the organization.
And for our listeners that are unfamiliar with Abacus Worldwide, just briefly explain the business, what are the core services. We're a member, and I'll talk about my experiences in a sec. But for those that don't know, who is Abacus Worldwide?
So we are a global association of law and accounting firms. And so we have members across the world in both disciplines, law and accounting, and they join for a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is to be a resource for their clients, especially now in this growing world where everybody is doing cross-border work, where people are moving and they have employees who live all over the world. We bring people together and vet our members so there's trust between the members. So if you have a need in any other country and we connect you with one of our members, you can have a sense that we've already gone through some due diligence with them, and your clients can have that sense of comfort as well. But there's other reasons. A lot of them also have to do with just shared best practices, practice management, being able to just talk to somebody else who is in your shoes and get a different perspective. That's a big part of what we try to bring, as well as the shared business opportunities.
There was a reason for us to join at Alexander Spencer, our Abacus Worldwide member. I can't remember how many years it's been. It's definitely been at least 4 years that we've been a member, 4 to 5 years. And our reason for joining was two parts. One was, as a growing firm, a lot of our clients' needs globally started to really come into play, and they wanted to expand internationally. And having the contacts, being a small Melbourne firm here, we didn't have the reach globally. And KPMG, Pitcher Partners, and these larger firms have those networks built in just through their brand. And the smaller mid tier firms have to do it differently. And that was the reason we joined to support our clients. And then the additional benefits of meeting other like minded business owners, accountants, and lawyers has been amazing. And the gentleman that's the member in Sydney, we've become really close friends. So it's an endless reasons for joining. So it is a unique model. I want to sort of dive into the success of Abacus Worldwide because there are many sort of associations or organizations that support accounting and legal firms globally to provide that service. But it's a member based business. It's a little bit different. It's member run. Do you want to talk about sort of the point of difference compared to the other global accounting associations?
Well, I mean, certainly we have both disciplines, which helps, especially because accountants need lawyers and lawyers need accountants. So it makes sense to go through that same process that a lot of the associations do, where you're vetting people. But the difference with us is that we have both areas. And worldwide, it helps too, because in a lot of places, lawyers and accountants work in the same firm. It doesn't work in all countries. Not all jurisdictions allow that. But in a lot of firms, they have both. And so for us, it makes sense to bring them together and not necessarily have to divide them because there's so much synergy between the work that they do. Certainly, other associations that are purely accounting or purely legal may focus a little bit more on some technical areas. And we do that as well, but it's a little bit more difficult when we have both disciplines. That's why we really focus on the businesses doing business together aspect of things.
So we're going to now talk about global expansion. Obviously, Abacus Worldwide is a worldwide organization where businesses are collaborating to help their clients to reach globally. In your experience, what are the top three challenges businesses face when expanding internationally?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that many jurisdictions require a professional that is licensed and located in that area. So if you don't have that, if you want to expand and you have to go out and start from scratch, you don't know who you're getting, right? You've got to go through a whole vetting process. So I think that's probably the number one challenge is that the laws require local presence. And even if they don't, want somebody that understands the laws and the local taxes, right? And the culture. So being able to have somebody, especially if you're going into a new area that you are not familiar with, you're going in for business reasons, not necessarily for familiarity. That's really a huge benefit to clients to be able to have the resources that we provide through the vetting and that our members take advantage of.
Yeah, and is there a specific area in the world that's really getting a lot of attention for global expansion? Is in Australia, businesses want to really break into the US market, just sheer size and population. UK is a big one, obviously similar. It's the gateway to Europe, and there's no language barriers. But have you noticed some highlights where it could be somewhere in Africa, South America? Are you seeing something that is unique where businesses are going, no, we want to go and do business here. And it's kind of a trend that's changing or moving.
I think we see it all over. We have certainly grown our presence in Africa. So we now have a number of firms there, and we're able to refer business to them because there is a need. The bigger thing I think that we see is the needs of employees needing their local taxes done because of the post-COVID world where so many people have moved or people are leveraging employees throughout the world. So we get a lot of inquiries where a company is trying to support their teams all over the world and they need that expertise. That's probably the biggest thing. And with that, it might be, somebody moved to their dream country and for not any economic reason other than they wanted to. And that the great thing is that we're generally able to support that, being able to help them with their taxes anywhere in the world. So we see a lot of that. But I mean, certainly expansion, our Latin America region is very busy. We pass a lot of business back and forth from the US and between the countries there. We put out a monthly report. So we look at this and there's not really a pattern other than everybody is doing business worldwide.
Obviously, Abacus would have had thousands and thousands of referrals and connections that we do across the world. I've had a lot of success referring into a firm in Atlanta with some of my clients. Can you give us a success story or an example of a scenario where Abacus was involved in connecting firms and got an amazing result from that perspective?
Something that happened fairly recently. There was a firm in Italy that had a client who inherited money in Canada, but inherited it, had no idea that the relative even existed. Like the paper trail was just very weak. But somehow they found out that there was this money. And of course, when there's money, there's taxes owed. And they needed not only to understand the law in Canada, but they were having trouble with the local bank, so they needed somebody who had some relationships there. So we were able to make that introduction. And so it was kind of a funny story because just the circumstances in which this inheritance came about was just funny. But to be able to connect them with a resource, especially when it's, somebody in Italy, all of a sudden now they have this random person in Canada that they'd never planned on, but their contact was able to say, "Don't worry about it. I have somebody who can help." And we do that a lot.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. We've had a lot of those circumstances, and it goes the other way. Recently, I had an inquiry come from the UK, US. It was a multinational, and they were looking at setting up in Australia. They kind of pseudo half had, but they needed to legitimize it, and we were the recipients on the other side, where we helped an abacus firm overseas to enter the Australian market. So it does go both ways. And as the managing partner of Alexander Spence, I have to say that we've been a benefactor of being a member of Abacus Worldwide, and so have our clients. But I want to now dive into you a little bit more, Jessica. You've written 3 books. You're the CEO and the director, global regional director in the US. Obviously, you've got some education background. Can we dive into a little bit about the books that you've released and the services and the consulting that you do to professional services and get an understanding of that side of your business?
Sure. So I started out my career, well, I actually started out in insurance, but I started out with the intention of being in marketing. But I had a degree not only in marketing but in entrepreneurship. So being a business owner was always something that I dreamed of. I just didn't know that it would end up looking the way that it did. So I worked in marketing, and when social media happened, so around 2008, 2009, I'm a nerd, so I've always been an early adopter. I was working in New York at the time, and I would commute. And so I would commute and I would read the old fashioned paper marketing magazines, the big tabloid marketing publications, which is how I learned about social media. I learned about this and I started experimenting with it. And next thing I knew, I had a client, and I wasn't even trying to get one. I just had one. And so I started out doing this, social technology piece, but really it evolved into strategy, marketing strategy. And then as I've grown up, and I like to say I help businesses grow up, I have gotten a lot more involved in doing a lot of fractional COO work, a lot of business processes, helping businesses get set up right from the beginning with the right systems, and teaching them a lot of things that an accountant might also get involved in, making sure that they're keeping their books and so that they can look and see how they're doing financially, make sure that it's tied into all of their processes. I get a little bit involved in HR, and my big passion is around culture and organizational culture. So that's what I've been spending a lot of time on in recent years. I got my doctorate in organizational leadership and development and focused on culture, which doesn't necessarily tie into any of my books, but I get involved in a lot of different things.
So for those that don't know the names of the books, what about a little plug? So you got 3 books, one recently published. Give us sort of the names and a little brief on what they are.
So the first one is called Perfect Pairings: The Art of Connecting People, which is all about being a connector and living an intentional life of how can I help you rather than how can you help me? How can I help you? Who do I know that you need to know? And it's something that I learned, and very early in my career. I hit the jackpot when it came to mentors. And I feel like that is, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be anywhere that I am today. So the book, all my books are very short form. That one is about being a networker, and it's good for people who are just starting out or people who might get frustrated and need a refresher. The second book is called, I can say it, you can beep it. It's called Everyone Has Shit. Unsolicited advice for being human. It's just about the fact that we're all dealing with something, and how do you get through that, whether it's through relationships, whether it's through getting rid of relationships, self-care, a little bit of everything. And it's just one of those, I felt like the need to write it. And I think it's pretty helpful for somebody who just needs a little get out of their own way. And my most recent book is called Being When You Grow Up, which just came out in January. And it's a little bit of a mishmash of life and career advice. So, whether it's somebody's just starting out or really, especially, I think, focused on Gen X millennials who are in this, what do I want to be when I grow up, even though I'm in my 40s, maybe 50s, and just basically giving people permission to change course regardless of where they are in their life.
I love that. We don't have too many guests on the podcast that have written three. They are short form, but it must have taken a lot of effort and time. How long did it take for you to write the most recent one?
3 years, but then like 2 months. Well, I was writing it and I started, and then I decided to go back to school on a whim. And so then when I finished school, I had most of it written. So I just kind of said, I got to push this out. And I'm working on another book that's on the accounting profession, the future of the accounting.
Ooh, you got to put me on the short list as an early VIP acquisition on that one. We'll keep your eyes out on that. But you did a doctorate in organizational leadership and culture. Is that what you did? So I just wanted
Organizational leadership and development,
and
but my
development.
capstone was on culture.
Let's talk about culture. It's a little bit a word that gets thrown around, and one that sort of, what's the definition? How do you influence? A really interesting word. So tell us about one, how important culture is to the success of a business.
So I actually take it a step back and I start with core values. And I am a big believer that if you can establish your core values and you can actually live your core values, then your culture will develop around it. And I think core values are incredibly important. And I think that if you develop them right, they should guide every single decision you make in your business.
I like that. The challenge sometimes can become in the larger corporates or multinationals where there are so many senior leadership group. And you could have, 10, you could have 100 of them. How do the larger organizations, we've got 5 partners here at Alexander Spencer, how do you kind of mold that into the version of that one core values that's aligned by the group? Is there a session that's got to be run? Is there a debate about what that looks like? And then if you really don't believe it, there's alignment. Talk us through, obviously, sole proprietor can drive that on their own. And it's probably the culture is a reflection of that one leader. But then if there are multiple leaders, how do we navigate through that and try to make sure that it is very well defined?
The more people you have in charge, the harder it is. But that's really where you get your values, is where you find out where there's agreement, right? And you get through all of the disagreement and you really narrow down to the things that are really important to multiple people. And then you check, right? You check to see within the organization at the different levels, do we actually practice this? Is this anywhere close to what we're saying? Now, a lot of times when we go through these exercises, this gives people something to strive for, to improve, to really truly live their values. But if you say that the easiest example is that you value your people, and then you go and you talk to your people and you're operating a sweatshop, there's zero alignment, right? So you look at the areas where you have agreement between different leaders, between different departments. In a big organization, right, you have to decide where you're going to do that exercise. And then it's the job of each leader as you go down the line to help live those values. They have to be real, right? And they can't be marketing speak. They have to be things that are really important to the people that are leading the organization.
That's a great advice. And we've gotten to a large number of staff here at the firm. We're getting close to a bit over 60 people. We haven't as yet pulled the trigger on hiring a internal human resource person. At what point do you believe that that's type of HR role and a culture role should be implemented into a business? Say, is it when there's 10 staff, 20 staff, 30 staff, or is it not based on numbers? And then just define sort of that role and how do they get involved in small business in terms of the key role and the task that the HR culture person has within an organization?
Well, so it's an interesting question because it goes to who should be driving culture. And where it fails is if you think that you can just hire somebody and put them in charge of culture and say, all right, that's it, you're on your own, right? They can certainly help guide a senior leader, but unless you're hiring a senior level person to do that, it's not going to be successful. In terms of size, I mean, that's the beauty of the world we live in is that there's a lot of fractional leadership. Right? As I'm a fractional COO. And so you can and should have somebody in a HR role. I mean, really, as soon as you have employees. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to be internal. They can be fractional, even if you have them a couple hours a week, just to make sure that you are treating your employees the way you're supposed to and following the law. And a lot of that falls through the cracks when you have smaller organizations. But the dynamics are very different than if you had 3 people on your team. So I don't think it's ever too early to bring in somebody, but they don't necessarily have to be full time. But they should not be the ones who are completely in charge of culture. That has to be your senior leaders. And an HR person or a director of people and culture can help develop programs that live those core values, and they can help make sure that you're following them, but it absolutely cannot start with them. They should have a say, but it can't start with them.
Great advice. And on that note, we sort of want to wrap it up. Amazing, amazing journey in your business career. You've done so much, a doctorate, 3 books, multiple roles at Abacus Worldwide. So I want to thank you so much for your time in coming out and speaking to us today. We didn't touch on the accent and where you're from. So where's your studio? Where are you based, Jessica?
So I'm in New Jersey in the US. I grew up in Florida. So I've been here for 20, 26, 27 years. So I might have a little bit of a Jersey accent, but most people can't pick up on it because I did grow up in Florida, which has a very nondescript accent. And as you know, I have a sister who lives in Australia. So I have little Aussie nieces who do have the Australian accent.
Well, that's awesome. Look, I hope to see you again. We met in Atlanta a couple of years ago. So I hope to see you again later in the year. And I know the Abacus Worldwide Conference might be, put it in there, it hasn't probably been announced yet, but hopefully in 2025 is in Sydney. So I look forward to seeing you again. And like I said again, thank you so much for your time. You've been an amazing guest, sharing your experiences not only in Abacus Worldwide and what we do there as a member, myself, and also the group, but some experiences in your journey in business. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952. And we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Savan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.